Hey everyone, welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White, and yes, Jason is back in the United States. Hi Jason, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, Greg. A little tired today. Just a long flight from Australia and got an extra week vacation there that I didn't want, unfortunately. But thanks for holding down the fort last couple of weeks and doing our shows. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to join you on those. But yeah, I think I'm going to sleep pretty good tonight.
Yeah, I bet you will, dude. So why don't you just recap, take us through the trip, I guess is what I'm saying. So, not
Yeah.
lead us up to the accident, what was going on, and then obviously the accident and what's happened. So the floor is yours, man. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a trip that you and I talked about a lot before this, before I went. We were able to get Josh Hayes to go and Larry Pegram, Michael Gilbert, Steve Rapp. Then we have Mark Miller over there. Dale Quarterly was there. Barrett Long. We had a decent team this year to go over there and challenge for the international trophy for the Phillip Island Classic. It's just such an incredible event. And as usual, I took about 15 friends that all went with us, and we rented 3 houses, and we put a little package together for people. But basically, on the Thursday prior to the race weekend, there's 4 practice sessions for us. So that you're kind of always working out the kinks on these bikes. Our bike was perfect. The bike I was on, Teague did such a good job. Just we went and tested it, and it was fine. So it was really about getting the guys up to speed. Josh, I wasn't worried about, obviously. None of the guys I was worried about. Larry had been there before in World Superbike. Michael had been there. Gilbert had been there before with the magazine. But it's just a matter of just making sure the bikes were, running. But pretty much everybody got their sessions in. Steve had an accident in the second session of the day. His throttle stuck. So that hurt his Thursday a lot. But come Friday, we get 2 8-minute qualifying sessions. So Greg, you just roll out and go. There's no practice. There's no nothing. You get 2 8-minute sessions. And I was able to qualify second for the races on the weekend, which I was really excited about. Last year I did a minute 38.4 to qualify seventh. This year I went minute 37.6 to qualify second to a young kid over there that was flying, Aaron Morris, nice guy. He got pole by 0.3, and I was excited for the races. And then basically when the race starts, it's been a long time, Greg, since I've been on the front row of anything. So I went off into turn 1, and last year I got such horrible starts there. I wasn't sure how far to go into turn 1 from I was leading into there. And Dave Johnson and another guy named Jed Metcher, very, very fast guys, went by, and I just kind of ducked in behind them. And for the first 2 laps, I thought, oh, this is great. This is no problem. And really what I did, Greg, is I just adjusted my line by about 2 feet, literally 2 feet. And it caught me. And this bike has never spun up on me. It's never done anything. It's never moved. It's got so much grip, and they're actually really fun to ride. And, but it did it in a really bad spot. And I was so conscious of what I was doing by just moving my line in, but the bike was almost upright, and the back went so quickly. It just chucked me. It high-sided me off the inside of the bike is what it did. And then it started this big chain reaction because there's a good guy named Bo Beaton over there that runs this Irvine Vincent bike that's just bitching, doesn't even, the way the engine bolts into the bike is, it's like frameless, and probably a $250,000 bike. And that ended up hitting him and me somehow, or he ended up hitting my bike that ran over my leg, I think. And that's when I remembered my leg being broken. I knew before I'd come to a stop that my leg was broke. And it ended what otherwise would have been a really fun weekend, because obviously Josh did an incredible job. Michael Gilbert and Larry Pegram as well. Rapp just had some problems because his bike had issues, and he got off on the wrong side on Thursday, but he was fighting. And I think we lost the team championship by 30 or 40 points, and I didn't score a point. So I think we would have had a chance at that. But it just didn't happen. And unfortunately, I ended up spending a week in a hospital.
So your leg's broken. What happens after that?
Well, my leg broke. I had a little bleeding to my brain, unfortunately. And then I had collarbone broken as well. I just kind of chipped my collarbone at the end on my left side. They loaded me up in an ambulance, and it's funny, Greg. When I'm in the gravel, I'm sitting there, and I think every racer does this. I'm sitting there thinking, what just happened? I couldn't even believe it happened. I was so shocked, stunned that this happened, because honest to God, I felt like I was riding 85%, and Josh was right behind me, which was great. And he's been super cool to talk to about this. And, he's done the whole, Jay, you're so used to training people, working with people, like you were in race mode, you're riding good, you were doing this. The problem is I know how hard I was pushing, and I felt really comfortable. And, but I'm laying in the gravel and I'm thinking, what just happened? Like, this doesn't even seem real. And they have a thing over there called the green whistle. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
The green whistle. So the doctor kind of gets to me in the gravel and he says, how you doing? And I said, my tibia is broke. My left tibia is broke. And, and he kind of says, are you sure? I'm like, of course, sadly I've got a history of that, don't I? Right. So I did know. And he says, put this in your mouth, and it's like this big green whistle, it looks like, but it's got, is it fentanyl, Greg? Or it's some medicine that's kind of family to morphine. And you basically you suck on this thing, and it immediately gives you the effect of your pain kind of starts to go away. So I'm in this gravel trap.
Wow.
Yeah. Sucking on this thing like a cigar, and not really feeling any pain, but being very cognizant of what had just happened and thinking about how I've just ruined this great trip, because Saturday, Sunday were races. And then Monday, Tuesday, I was going to stick around and ride with all my friends that had come over there. And, within an hour after my accident, got a 2-hour drive to Melbourne Hospital. And that's where I ended up going. I went straight to the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. I went to their trauma unit, and they were a little worried, obviously, about the scan they had on my brain, but I was fine there. I got my own room and everything, and they did surgery on me the next day. They put an external fixator on me just to kind of set the leg and stabilize my leg. They couldn't go in and cut on me because of the soft tissue damage that could have been done by the tibia breaking. So for 3 days, I had a external fixator on me. It's been a long time since I had one of those, but I've had those before too. And then I got hooked up with this absolutely incredible doctor over there, Dr. Andrew Oppie, who kind of takes care of the World Superbike and MotoGP guys, young guy. And they moved me to this other hospital, Epworth, and where I ended up staying for the last 4 or 5. I was at the first hospital for 4 days, and then the last hospital for the same. And he did surgery on my tibia, put a rod down it. And I honestly, Greg, this guy was so great. Most people that have seen me walk around the paddock and know how bent my left leg is from an injury long time ago. And he actually lengthened my leg and straightened it. And then put a rod down the middle of my tibia. And he did an incredible job. I mean, he would be a guy that I would think about going back to actually fix my ankle, because he said he gave me an option about trying to fix my ankle that nobody else has given me. And so it kind of gave me a little hope. And it's such a weird thing, because in a way, it's almost a good thing that it happened, the fact that it happened on my left leg right in the middle. So it didn't happen in my previous injury, but it allowed somebody new to look at my leg. My surgery went incredible. And what we did is, after I got released from the hospital, we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of hang out for 3 or 4 days. I was really fortunate that I had Caroline Olsen. She was with me. She was amazing. And my mom as well. Just both of those two were just absolutely incredible for me to be there. And we rented an apartment about a mile, not even that, half a mile from the hospital. So that way, if there was anything that happened or anything, we could just get right to the hospital. But I wanted to wait like 3 or 4 days just to make sure my leg was good before I flew home. And that's what we did. And we flew home today.
So now what's for the future? I mean, obviously, was he able to perform any surgery on your face and get that thing looking any better? Because he obviously straightened and lengthened your leg, but
I know.
Or was that the only area he focused on?
That's an area that I don't think anybody can fix, unfortunately.
Was that too early, Jay? Is it too early?
No.
Is it too early? Because I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know when I start heckling you again, because I feel so bad.
You know how drugged up I was? I bet the Pats. I bet the Pats. So hey,
what Jason is referring
I said I
to,
wasn't going to do that again. I said I was never going to bet against your team, and it was the worst Super Bowl I've ever seen in my life. I was embarrassed to be in Australia as an American.
Oh please! It was an unbelievable.
The Pats.
It was an unbelievable, like, defensive.
Such crap.
Oh,
But
please.
I'll tell you one thing that was really funny though. This little apartment that Caroline and my mom got. So we're sitting there one night, and all of a sudden we can hear a concert, and we're thinking that sounds really familiar. So we open up the back door. Caroline opens up this back door, and within shouting distance from our apartment is a Phil Collins concert.
No
And
kidding.
you listen to every one of his songs, and it was like right there in our backyard. And he was playing there for 2 or 3 nights, and yeah, that was pretty crazy. It was good. I mean, I tried to stay positive through the whole thing, and for all of our listeners that are out there, friends, family, and otherwise, I cannot thank everybody for the support. I mean, the amount of stuff that was blowing up on my social media, and I was doing my best to answer as many as I could, from the hospital bed. But Greg, it was incredible the amount of people that were writing to me, and the people that I heard from, even within the industry that we look up to, rider wise and things. I mean, it was incredible. So that really helped pull me through this. And honestly, I'm hoping that my recovery won't be too long, and I could kind of get back to my life again. It's just a bummer that this happened. And I know it's part of it. It's been a long time, Greg, since I've fallen off a motorbike,
Yeah. And what is the prognosis though, seriously, for your recovery?
It's good. No, it's great. I mean, the doctor came in after my surgery and he said, Jay, that surgery went absolutely as good as it could. I mean, I had a plate in there, Greg, that's been in there for 16 years. And so I was worried about it being really evasive, because he's like, Jay, I got to take that plate out to put the rod down your tibia and this and that. And I'm like, oh God, this is going to hurt when I wake up, and I'm going to be miserable for 2 or 3 days. To be fair, I've just I'm not even, of course, you're always in a little bit of pain, but it's been the easiest surgery I've ever had. It's been the easiest recovery so far I've had. Modern medicine is insane how good it is, the things that they do now. And in fairness, Greg, I'm walking through this thing right now. I've already been walking on my leg, gingerly. But within 12 hours, they had me up on my feet, walking on my leg. And, it was funny. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but I broke it really bad, as you know, Greg, in the lower part. And then I'd completely forgotten that I had broken it on the top at one time too. That's when I took poor Roger out at Virginia. I broke the top part of my tibia, and now I broke it right in the middle. So I got all 3 covered on the left leg. And it's like, it's embarrassing to talk about. But anyways, I think had I not got something running me over, I would have been fine. It's the first time I've ever used the DR suit ever. And without that, I think I would have probably had a shattered shoulder or collarbone. That thing popped and did its job for me. So I'm very lucky. I feel very lucky. I'm lucky to have the people around me that I have. I've got an unbelievable support group, and that goes along. Greg, I had people coming up to me in Australia thanking us for doing this podcast. I was blown away.
Really?
Yeah. Cool. There's a couple of the Australian Superbike guys. Glenn Allerton, good friend of mine, the races Australian Superbike. He's saying, Jay, I love the podcast. Podcast's great. And I had a couple people within our garage that went over for Team USA that were very, very much listening, and awesome. to everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really. Thanks everybody.
Yep.
So Jay, I have to ask this now. I know you're on pain meds and everything, but are you going to go back next year? Do you want to compete again next year?
Well, it's a funny thing. I keep on thinking to myself, like, I just like to ride so much. And Phillip Island, as Phillip Island, as you know, is just such an incredible place. And I put a lot of effort into the team this year. I put a lot of effort into getting some of my close friends together to try to go over there and accomplish something. And we fell a little bit short. And the sad truth is I've shown a lot of pace. But I finished 2 out of 8 races. Actually, I finished 2 out of the 4 that I've started. So, last year in the 3rd race, my bike broke. This year, I fell in the very first race. So I guess technically, I didn't really get a chance to start in the other ones. But I learned from this. I'm continuously learning. I've always said, I've never been the guy that's claimed to know everything. I've never said that all my methods are set in stone on what I do and how I do things. So I'm continuously learning myself. But I was very cognizant of what I did. I opened up my line literally a foot or two going into this left-hander that you come out of MG, which is the tight right, one quick short shift to third, you go back to the left. And literally, Greg, I was probably 75% throttle, these bikes rev to about 9,800 RPM. I was probably in around the 7,500 RPM range. I was up off the edge of the tire already, but I was about 2 feet tighter than I normally been because I didn't want to follow right through the middle of the apex of this corner, because the lap before it slowed me down a little too much, which slowed my motor down a little bit too much. So what I did is, instead of following into the apex, I just opened up a little bit. And then as we went through the apex, my line took me to the inside of Davo on the exit. And I felt really confident, and I didn't think that there was any problem with it. And I was just rolling the throttle on smoothly. And I know a lot of people have seen the video, and it flicked me so fast. I didn't even have time to, I didn't even know it was going sideways. And I've had a lot of different people write into me about what goes on over there, because there's so many events, Greg. There's so many classes, and it is vintage racing. So there's a lot of oil on the track. One of the biggest reasons why Colin didn't go back is because the oil on the track. But I'm not so comfortable to blame it on that. This could have definitely been something that I did, and it might be something like, Josh and I talked about it. We'll never really know, but I do know that I made a change in the line that I did previous. I was planning on things, and yeah, I want to go back. I definitely want to go back. I'd love to go back with the same guys that we went with this year. And try to win the team challenge part of it. So, it's a fun trip. Just wasn't as fun this year.
And what's the immediate plan then for JP43 schools? Are you still going to be able to do the one-on-one stuff that you've been doing, or?
For February, I'm going to take the month off for sure. I've got some people. I've already contacted some people that have signed up, and then March as well. It's like, I'm going to just kind of see how things go. I'm lucky that I have the staff that I do, and I have a lot of repeat students that want to work with the staff that I have. So that part of it won't be too bad. I think what I got to do is, something Dr. Ting taught me a long time ago is, I got to accept my injury and just to get myself healing and do the right things to get healing. And that's what I'm doing. And I feel pretty good. Today was just a little bit rough, just long flight, a lot of aches and pains and such just from that. And, but long term, I'll be back on my feet. Hopefully I'll be back on my feet by maybe the end of March. I'm hoping, like, where I'll actually be able to get back to my life a little. So it set me back a tiny bit, but we'll fight through it. We'll be okay. So enough about what went on over there with the whole Phillip Island thing. It was great, but it's in the past now. I think that the big news right now for me, Greg, is I was on a plane all day, but I know they were testing in Sepang. And I know the big thing was, like, somebody was getting his shoulder done and this, that, but it looks like it's kind of the same that we'd expect. Marc Marquez goes quickest at the first day of the Sepang test. I read some interesting stuff about how the doctors actually ordered somebody to go take all of his bikes apart while he was in recovery, because they did not want him riding at all. And it's actually interesting if you read the article that was said about that. But I think that there's some surprises. The surprise who's second to me, everybody's talking to me about who's second, and Alex Rins is not a surprise to me in second spot. I've been saying how good the guy is, but you got Vinales in third, who I definitely would like to talk to you about. But how about Tito Rabat in fourth? What do you make of that?
I mean, unbelievable. And if you look at it, he did 59 laps, which was, pretty standard, a little bit more than some, but did it on the 58th lap. I mean, think about Tito. He was already kind of in the mix, Jason, broken, right?
Yep.
And now he's getting healthier and he's back at it. So, he's a surprise for sure. I think Rins is definitely a surprise. Takaaki Nakagami, who led the timesheets in the first preseason, is in seventh spot. I think a lot of people expected the factory Ducati team, which is now called the Mission Winnow team, to come out and dominate. I think what Marquez did, though, go back is, the guy was 5 hours a day in physio. He's still not 100%. And the funny thing is, Jason, if you look at the photos from today, he looks perfectly in a line with the bike. He's just offset to the right. And he mentioned that he has to change his riding style. And of course, he can't hang off as much as he does because the shoulder won't take it. He only did 29 laps compared to, say, Rins, who did 61. So we know he finished up early. But I heard that the doctors, when they went in to work on his shoulder, that they were baffled that he could even ride a motorcycle, let alone win a world championship. The dude is up there in toughness. I mean, no question about it. I think the other surprise, if you look down the list, that's a pleasant surprise, is that Pol Espargaro on the Red Bull KTM factory bike was 10th, and he did it. He did it 3 laps into it. And all reports coming from Sepang is that of the teams that came with changes, visible changes, that the Red Bull KTM factory racing machine is the most changed. New swing arm, new chassis, new motor, new bodywork, new electronics. So, KTM knows that they were in a bit of a trouble, but man, I don't even know if they got any break over Christmas and New Year's, because that bike looks a lot better. The fact that Pol Espargaro was only 0.7 of a second behind Marc Marquez says a lot, at least first day. There's 2 more test days to go.
Right. I just wonder about how sustainable those lap times are, though. It's okay to go out and do a fast lap. Like, the thing that concerns me about it is if you look at the KTM team right now, you have Pol, who did great in 10th. The next guy is Oliveira in 16th. So Oliveira was pretty much at the back of most of the preseason tests prior. And then you got Kallio, and then you got the guy they signed for all the money, Zarco. He's 20th. So he's still floundering, isn't he? I mean, he's still way back. It looks like he only got 20 laps, if I'm not mistaken. He did his fastest lap on the 4th, so he spent a lot of time in the garage or just didn't run a lot of laps. But you got to think, I mean, the KTM, Greg, when you see Espargaro 10th, that's, I think for a 1-lap thing, that's kind of what you see. You kind of see the KTM up there. And yes, they've made a lot of changes. I saw photos and things of the Aprilia, and I was really hoping, I think that after they've gotten thrashed in the press, has Aprilia over the last couple of years. And you wonder, at least I do, you look at what Aprilia spends to go MotoGP racing. And over here in America, for sure, we don't see a lot of Aprilias rolling around on the streets over here. And the money that they're spending to go MotoGP, I would really hope that their results would start to turn. And you got Aleix back there in 13th. They've brought Bradley in, who's testing for them, and for all intents and purposes, they seem really, really happy with him. But that bike looks a lot different. But then you look back again, and you got Iannone. He did 36 laps today, did his fastest on his 35th, which means they probably threw a tire in at the end, and he's still 1.5 seconds off on a 1-lap deal, and he's not even close.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. They brought the 2017 version for Aleix to try.
Yep.
And the bike the 19 version has gone back in time and is more like the 17 version. Aprilia has also had they hired a guy from Formula One to come in and basically manage the business. So that frees up the guy who was managing the team, who's more of an engineer type. So they've now started to add a little bit of personnel to try to relieve some of the pressure. But 2018, if you look at the development of the bike and what they're testing, was a complete wash, and they've gone back to a 17 bike. So I think right now that for Aprilia, and obviously it shows, I mean, they're 0.9, almost 1 second off in 13th spot with Aleix, who's much better rider than that.
Yep.
After the first day of testing, MotoGP did a quick little interview with Aleix, and he said straight up that what they've done is not good enough. That's what he said today.
Is that right? So, I haven't seen that. Yeah. So
no, but you're right on. I mean, you're right on with what you're saying, and I think it obviously Andrea Iannone, who comes off of the Suzuki and was, able to finish podiums, possibly even win races from time to time, is floundering back in 21st, 1.6 off.
Yep.
And they are happy with Bradley, but Bradley Smith, who got to test in a private test a couple days before we got here, first day of Sepang test, and they have 2 more to go. Was out developing the bike, and they can't just go spit out new parts. So
I wonder what he did lap time wise. I was hoping he was testing today, and I noticed he wasn't on the board today testing. So I'd have to go back and look at what he did at the pre-test.
No, he's expected to test at least one of these days of the remaining 2 days. So we might be able to get some lap times from Bradley. Yeah.
And I think looking at Nakagami in 7th, and you look at even Brattle, who's taken who took Lorenzo's spot. He's 9th, 2.2. It's very competitive compared to where everybody else is. It's got to be a little bit of a reprieve for Brattle to be able to come back and do some riding right now. But the Hondas, I don't think are going to be bad. Even Cal boy, he really messed his ankle up. I saw some X-rays of his ankle.
No,
horrendous.
Me too. Smashed it.
So it's good, just good to see him back on the bike. But the Hondas, I think, are going to be strong. But I'll tell you that I don't know why. Rins and Vinales. I think if they can get Vinales comfortable on that bike, he's the biggest mystery to me is Vinales. Like, he just shows all this speed and all this stuff. And I know last year they were part of the gray area that Honda and Ducati created, and they didn't really get in that window that did Yamaha. But Vinales is a guy that I feel is a real threat, as is Rins this year. I think that we could see more battles with a couple of these guys being up there a little bit more up in front this year. I think surprises as far as really big letdowns. Dovey's in 8th. Did 47 laps today, so it wasn't like he didn't put in a ton of laps. He's back there in 8th, and Hafiz, I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, he did 49 laps, and he's dead last in 26th on the KTM. So it looks to me like the KTM is struggling. And then the last guy I'd say that's a bit of a disappointment is Joan Mir in 23rd. I think. But Greg, you don't know what these guys are testing, and you don't know what they're going through. These guys, when they have these 3-day tests, especially at the start of the season, they have plans, they have certain things, and there's some guys they're going to be able to go out and do lap times, and there's going to be some guys that are just going to go out and try to go through their process of what they're testing.
Yeah, exactly. I know Dovizioso crashed early on, like first lap out, he crashed. We also know that the now Monster Energy Yamaha MotoGP team, they've gone through a process of scraping the top as well, and they've fired some, the guy who was in charge of the M1 program. Now they have somebody new, and the whole idea is to bridge the gap between Japan and the actual team that's based out of Europe. So allegedly there's more of a direct connection that the team has, Europe and Japan talking more. So early on, you have to say with Valentino 6th and Maverick in 3rd, again, it's day one where they still have 4 more total days of testing, because they have 2 more days at Sepang, and then they'll get 2 days at Qatar in February. So It's still a lot to talk about, and we'll obviously wrap this conversation up about the test next week as we look at how the 3 days end up shaking out, because one of the questions tomorrow is going to be, how is Marc Marquez feeling? Is he going to be able to ride the bike? I know that there were comments from the team saying that they had a laundry list of things that they needed to test, and Marquez basically saying post-test day that there was no chance that they could get to all those things because of his limited laps. So, but no matter what you say, a 59.621 around Sepang by Marc Marquez to lead the way day one of MotoGP testing with that shoulder. I mean, who's guessing 60%, 70%? Yeah. And he's just such a stud.
He's a stud. Yep, absolutely. And you really got to, when we start talking about pain thresholds on these guys, what are we really comparing it to? Because I just feel like with so many other sports, like we see guys go down with injury and they can kind of, I don't want to say milk it, but I'm going to say milk it, Like I think that,
yeah, right.
It's like, oh, it's a 2-month injury. And I don't know what it is about motorcycle. I don't know what it is about racers in general, car, motorcycle, whatever. Everybody just wants to get right back at it. That nobody wants to sit around. Nobody wants to wait. We all just kind of want to get going. Like it's, I don't even think it's a machismo thing. It's nothing to do with that. It's just that we just want to get back on and get started. And the kid did 29 laps today or whatever. And I mean, it just goes to show that, you could take a couple of months off. You don't forget how to ride a bike at that level, especially. And they've got Brattle doing a lot of the donkey work right now on getting that bike where it needs to be. Nakagama is obviously on pace, so he's probably handling some of the testing work as well. And that they're getting that feedback back to Marquez. I think it's a real bummer that Lorenzo's not there to really help him with that. But and he's another guy though. He'll as soon as that they go to Doha for that test, he'll be ready to go.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how the rest of this test shapes up. All right, let's go ahead and transition to some MotoAmerica stuff, Jason, because last week Team Hammer, who runs the M4 ECSTAR Suzuki team, announced that in the MotoAmerica Supersport class that they will field fan favorite Bobby Fong on a GSXR 600. So, Jason, as you know, as I like to do, I gave Fong a call, and I led with, this, like, you're back. So tell us what's going on.
Man, I'm excited to be back. Hell, for a while, I was just hanging out with Jeff White in New Jersey, just, picking up chicks. I wasn't doing anything.
right.
No, man, I'm excited to be back, and especially on a 600. I mean, as much as I liked riding the big bikes, it's kind of cool going back to your roots and what you started road racing on with the 600, and especially with the existing winning team has been here since day one. And man, I've been trying to ride for John and Chris, or the Ulriches since like 2010. And every year we always discuss about the possibility of riding for them, and it just never panned out. But right when I thought things were going to be done after the Road Race Factory ended up not wanting to race this year, I was like, I got a day job. I'm a sales rep for Piaggio, and I'm like, okay, this is where my career is going. And one night I was at home, and I was like, man, I wonder what M4 is doing. So I called John, and I was just like, I was super blunt, and I was just so straightforward. And I was just like, John, what is it going to take for me to ride for you? I said, I'll do whatever it takes, whatever you want me to do. Let's make this happen. We've been talking about this for so long. And he's like, you know what, Bobby? I think we can make this work. And we just started talking, and here we are today. But no, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Now I got some motivation when I go to the gym.
I mean, Jason, how important is it that sometimes you have to go get a ride, right?
Hey, everybody at some point, it seems like, gets a lifeline thrown to them. And I think this is the one that Bobby needs to get this job, to basically be the guy on that team, to go to the forefront and try to do as best as he can on that GSXR 600 for the Ulriches. I think is a big step for Bobby. When you sit there and you're at home and you got nothing, and yeah, I mean, I've been there. I know what it's like to just be sitting there and think, God, I really want to ride. I don't know how to do it. I can't do it on my own. A lot of these guys don't have a lot of money behind them to just be able to start their own teams or go jump on something else. So, but this is what you got to do. You got to pick up the phone. You got to show some initiative. And if that's what he did with John, then good on him for being able to pick up the phone, make a phone call, and it panned out for him. So yeah, now he's got something to stay motivated for. He's got a couple of months. Hopefully they're going to get some tests under their belt on that bike, and he'll be ready to go.
Absolutely. So many of you might know Bobby, like Jeff White does, apparently, but some of you don't. So the details of his racing career are plentiful. And when I asked him this next question, he was like, I'm going to give you the shortest answer possible. But unfortunately, Bobby's racing career isn't a short answer. So I asked him to give us the rundown on him.
Well, I started flat tracking young. I'm from Stockton, California. Grew up flat tracking, started supermoto, road race for AFM when I was 14 years old. Did my first pro race when I was actually 15 with my dad on R6 and a team called Bay Area Riders Forum. I hired a manager 2006, got on Safety First Suzuki for 2007 and 8. So I raced for the Safety First Suzuki, actually got quite good results back then in 2007 and 8. I mean, we had every competitive person in the U.S. in the 600 class. I mean, we're talking about the Haydens, everybody. I mean, Chaz Davies, Steve Rapp, everybody, Josh Hayes. Everybody was in that class, and we managed to actually do fairly well for being a rookie and being so young in the class. And then I moved to 2009. I did some wild cards it was called Paradigm Yamaha for a while. We actually got a lot of top fives, and the class was even more stacked that year in the 600 class. And I had the promise to possibly go on in 2010. It was looking like it was Project One Atlanta, and I was in talks to being on that. That was like basically the satellite factory team for Yamaha. And everything kind of panned out in my career where everybody either like bought a ride underneath me or it just didn't really pan out. I've always had the results, but for some reason I never had the full package in their eyes. But every year I managed to get a ride, and 2010 really changed my career a lot because I got my first sport bike win. Then again, I was promised the world for 2011 to get on a good team for 2011, and I caught myself not having a ride in 2011. I ended up putting up garage doors for 2011, and then Mean Motorsports came around, another Yamaha team, and then we actually got up quite a bit of podiums in 2012 at Mean Motorsports. And then 13, I signed on with Triple Crown Yamaha, did one race with them. They went under, started with Triumph, then raced with Triumph. D&D Cycles actually revamped my career on the Triumph, which is his name is Bobby. He actually revamped my career on the Triumph and ended up doing a full season with D&D Cycles, and then signed with George Latest on the Triumph. Got quite good results actually. Won a few and got quite a bit of podiums. And then started the ZX10 with George Latest. Got second in the championship in 2016. 2017, actually, we had better results overall, but we just weren't consistent. We had a lot of DNFs and some mechanicals and stuff. But got on the Superbike podium and felt the speed was there for sure on a Superbike or a super stock bike compared to the Superbikes. And 2018, I signed up with Hudson Yamaha, and it was just an up and down season. It didn't end up working out. So I finished the 2018 with Danny Walker in the Road Race Factory, which is definitely a pleasure to ride for him and, work with all the guys. It's such a good crew. And after he shut the doors on that program, hell, it was a few months ago, I felt like I didn't have anything going on. So I got this day job, and here I am today after many years of speaking with John every off season. 2019, I feel like it's going to be a good year, especially with PJ in the class and Hayden doing as good as he's been doing. I think it's going to be podium shootout every single weekend, hopefully.
That is long and detailed, is it not? Like I forgot half of the teams that he's ridden with over the years.
It's hard to believe he was around 2006. I mean, that's a long time ago. That was the last year I raced. So, I mean, that's a long time ago. And, he was just getting started, of course. I remember Bobby being in the paddock a little bit back then. And, I think that when you listen to him talk and you listen to some of the resolve he's got now, he sounds like, he's just talking about some of the good results and some of the promises. He's kind of come through at a bad time of our sport. Obviously, he's another one of those kids that kind of is a tremendous rider, tremendous talent, but kind of came through when DMG and some of those were really crushing our sport and in my opinion, ruining it. So, our sport got a lot of bad press over that whole period of time. And some of the riders that were really good got lost in that mix. I think that the thing for Bobby's got to believe that he can be as good as he can be. This is just my personal opinion on him. I've watched him ride. I've seen how good he is. I've seen him do things on bikes that nobody else can do as well. I also feel like he could have won a couple championships along the way and made things a little bit harder on himself. So I think maybe getting with an unbelievably structured team that's used to winning championships that can help him along in that process, possibly of getting those results he needs and realizing that there are going to be days where he's just got to finish and do the best he can and maybe not override a bike to the point where he's going to lose a bunch of points. He will definitely be in the fight for podiums all year long on that thing. And it's a matter of him getting comfortable, but this is his shot now. He's on he's gone, Greg, from not having a ride at all to just jumping on, I don't know, probably one of the top 5 seats in the paddock is six seats as far as like, a seat that you, with a really good team that you want to be on a good bike. I think that, that team's been around a long time. So it's a big step, big opportunity.
Yeah. And like you said, since the end of 2018 season, Fong took a job with Piaggio. So I was kind of curious, like with the new ride, I was wondering if he's going to have to give the job up or if he's going to be able to do both.
No, I plan on doing both. As everybody knows, racing doesn't last forever. And, I like working with Piaggio. It's, I'm learning new things every day, and it's honestly made me a better person, and it taught me a lot of things since I've been here. I started right after Barber last year. No, it's good. Piaggio knows that I'm racing. It's not going to take up, my Monday through Friday too much. We don't have 20 races like MotoGP, and I'm not testing with the team every day. So I'm still making time to train and get my riding in during the week. Also, my day job, it requires a lot of computer work, and I carry my work cell phone on me all the time. So I'm managing both. I got a pretty busy schedule, but I'm managing it well, and let's see what happens. I'm definitely trying to win the championship, see what the future holds for racing.
Do you think that gives him any less, or I guess a deficit, Jason, that he's got to carry a full-time job compared to the people he's got to race against at this point?
Well, I think it just kind of shows that, gone are the days where you could just be paid to be a motorcycle racer. There was a time when you could, what was it, Greg? We worked it out. Wasn't there at one time there was about 15 guys making minimum of $100,000 just to swing a leg over a bike, and those days are so long gone right now.
Yeah.
That you still got to be able to make a living. And look, this is an opportunity that was given to him, and but on the other side of it, if he started a new job and he's doing his thing with Piaggio and he's pretty happily employed there and he can see a future there, maybe, then by all means, I think he should try to do both. And I'm sure that they're going to be, they know who Bobby Fong is. They're willing to work with him, and John and Chris are going to be sensitive to that as well. I would assume. So he's doing what's best for him right now. He got to be able to make ends meet at the end of the day. And Bobby's a fit guy. He's not a slacker. He's a hard worker off the track. So he'll be a guy that will still put in his reps, get his jogs and his runs in, and cycling and what have you. So he'll still get a lot of that stuff in.
Yeah, and Bobby mentioned he'd been riding some dirt bikes, but I was curious to learn more about how he'd been training for road racing and if he's going to get to do some testing with the M4 ECSTAR Suzuki team before Road Atlanta, April 6th.
No, I've been riding quite a bit of dirt bikes, even with the job. I make time, and I manage my time quite well. So I ride a few times during the week, motocross, a few tracks. I've been riding a lot with flat track racer Chad Coase, and we go riding a lot. And then our first test is before Daytona this year. It's a week before Daytona, so that will be the first time I'll be on the bike. And then we're doing Daytona. And then I think one more time in Little Talladega before Road Atlanta. So I'm actually looking forward to riding the Suzuki, and they got so much data since, the bike hasn't changed in so long. So, they have so much data, and my crew chief, Frank, has been with the team for a long time, and he knows the Suzuki, and it's definitely going to be a winning package in my eyes, or in everybody else's eyes as well.
So there's that answer.
Well, the good news is if he's doing Daytona, and I forgot that the team does Daytona, getting 200 miles on that bike in race conditions is going to be good, even though there's definitely some compromises with that racetrack. I think that he's going to get an opportunity to be on that bike a lot. If they're going to Jennings, I think they always go to Jennings like the week prior, Greg. But he'll be down at Jennings, spin some laps there, go to Daytona, do that down there, and then like Little Talladega, probably just the last little shakedown stuff before they load the truck. And, obviously that's a home track for them is Talladega. So they'll go there, do a little shakedown, and then just roll over to Atlanta, which is only a couple hours away from there. So he's going to get plenty of time on the bike, and he's got great crew, good team, a lot of history there. So, and Jason, a great rider.
The GSXR 600 is not a finicky bike to learn how to ride.
No, it's really not. It's going to be an easy bike for him. I don't think it's going to be, that part of it's not going to be hard at all. I think that's going to be the easy part. Is just, and he's seasoned. He's been on a lot of different motorcycles. So from jumping from one bike to the next isn't going to bother Bobby at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And finally, I asked him, Jay, what does a successful 2019 look like for him and his team?
Well, John and Chris didn't hire me just to be on the podium every single weekend. They won a championship, and the Yamahas have been winning it, for a lot of years now. And I think they hired me to win a championship, and I've never won a championship, MotoAmerica, Daytona Sport Bike, or anything. So a win to us is either going to be missing the championship by 1 or 2 points or winning the championship. I'm going to do my best, everything in my power to try to make that happen.
Yeah, listen to what he says. I think that realistic expectations are what all racers need to have at the beginning of each year. I think that you have to look at the team, you have to look at the bike, you have to look at the program itself. He's got a lot of those boxes checked off. I think that if you're going to be on a Suzuki, he's on the Suzuki to be on. So the idea of trying to go win a championship for those guys, I know podiums mean a lot to Chris and John. Making sure that you're there every weekend. You got to score points. This is going to be a championship this year where you have to be there every weekend. You cannot throw 1, 2, 3 races away and give guys like Hayden and PJ, guys with a lot of experience. It's time now for Bobby to, you even heard him say he hasn't won a championship. there's no reason why Bobby Fong can't win a championship. He's a good enough rider. I think that the mental fortitude that it's going to take for him, how he will handle that if he gets a lead in the championship or if he starts winning races and this and that. I would hope that if he does start winning some races, that'll build his confidence and make him a little bit feeling a little invincible almost. And if he's got to come from behind, I think he has the ability to do that as well. But I think being there every weekend, scoring points, seeing where you're at halfway into the season, and then kind of making a real serious effort at the championship from there is going to be important for him. So, and we can't. There's a lot of guys. I don't think that you can count out Richie Escalante. Haven't heard what Braden Ort's doing, but there's going to be other guys there this year. They're going to be up front. Bryce Prince, some of these guys. So it's not just going to be PJ and Hayden. I don't think. I think there's going to be a couple other people that might step up. So
yeah, I'm going to try to get my hands on the entry list for next week because I know the entries, like the permanent stuff, just closed. So I'm going to get a hold of MotoAmerica, try to get those entries, and we could definitely dive deeper into who's going to be doing what in the classes. That'll be pretty cool.
Yep. Well, we heard Bobby talk about the Daytona 200, and I'm pretty excited about this. See, I feel like I resurrected somebody's career. Take the guy to Phillip Island, he goes and wins, and now Josh Hayes. Yes, Josh Hayes.
How do you claim you resurrect his career? Why? Tell me.
Because it was going nowhere. Poor guy had nothing. So I put him on an old vintage bike, and look what he goes and does. Right.
What does he go and do?
What's he going to go do now is, I don't know, this, he might hate me for it. He might want to go back over to Australia because he's going to ride for Melissa. So
his wife?
Yes. I don't even know. I was thinking about this today. Is there somebody more gnarly than Melissa as far as when it comes to actual motorcycling? Like she just breathes and lives and eats it more than anybody I've ever met, and loves it. And now the marriage will be tested, so it'll be fun because apparently she got an R6 to put together for somebody, and this is just what I've read. I read it on Road Racing World today. Basically she was putting a bike together. Whatever, that fell through. So she got an R6 just sitting there and thought, well, why don't we put Josh on it at Daytona? And they're kind of going about it the way that there's some unfinished business to do down there. I remember Josh, I think he got disqualified one year.
We sure did.
I did read about it where, what year was it? 2008, got disqualified. And he had to give the trophy to Chaz. And then I remember him falling out at the night race when Bostrom won that as well. And I think Melly actually fell out of that race too. So,
was that the one where she fell out top? Like she was in the top 10 and then crashed
in the top 7 or 8 or something. She fell in the chicane with like 3 to go or something.
Yeah, so she was ripping too. Yeah.
Yep. So the Hayes family is gonna load up the truck, it sounds like, and head off to maybe to Daytona. I don't know what the whole program is. I'd have to call him, and I wanted to call him before I got on the phone with you, but they've got Chuck Cicchetto behind them, which is great. Great. It's not going to be hard to get support for Josh down there to go down.
No,
the guy rides amazing. So, and he likes Daytona, but I just think it's funny, like this is a guy that's 4-time Superbike champion that, it would be really easy for him to just go figure something else out and go ride and do something, but he just loves to race so much. He loves it. And I think that him going to the Daytona 200, I think it's really good for the people of Daytona and the actual track that they're going to have a 4-time Superbike champion in their event this year. I know Danny's going to be there. Eslick,
Danny Eslick, multi-time winner there.
Yep. Then you got Bobby Fong is going to be there. So
I'm sure Corey West is probably going to be there like usual.
And just the usual suspects. I've heard Brandon Posh is going to be there. Possibly.
Heavy hitters,
which would be great. Brandon's a young kid who's he works so hard on putting projects together on his own and talk about a go-getter. So he'll be there. I mean, and Daytona can throw up crazy results and crazy winners, and it's not just a sprint race, it's 200 miles. So just like the fact that Josh is going to be down there has definitely piqued my interest a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I think for us too, being able to watch Bobby on the Suzuki piques our interest to see how he, kind of like a prelim to what MotoAmerica season could be, how well he gels with that bike. I mean, what do you think about the news of Josh going down and doing this?
Well, I have mixed feelings, obviously, but I think the reality is that Josh, and I say mixed feelings because obviously when I have a racer friend who retires, I'd like to have them stay retired if they're healthy, and not go to foreign lands and break their legs. But I also, at the same time, I understand. I completely understand the need to compete. It's why I do archery, Jason. It's not, strictly because I like to stand in one spot and throw an arrow down a range. Is because I'm competing and I'm getting better. So I get the competition part of things, and I think that Josh after looking at him struggling around the paddock last year, he looked like a wounded puppy all year, not being able to ride, but being in the paddock. I think it's great. He's going to go race the 200. He's not going to mop it up by any stretch of the imagination because a lot happens in the pits and he's got really strong competition. But there's also a good carrot being dangled, a paycheck, which, I think is done for him. So I can't remember the purse. I want to say it's 20 grand or 25,000, something along those lines, for winning the 200. So
I think he's got to split.
A lot of good things for him.
Think he's going to split it with his boss?
Of course, he's got to split it with whose bank account it gets deposited into. MP13's bank account, exactly, and maybe she's giving him a stipend. She'd be like, "Thanks for the 20 grand. Here's your $400."
Man, it's going to be some interesting nights for sure if things aren't going great. But I don't see why they can't. I mean, Melly puts together a great bike, and she does a good job with all that. So.
Right, Josh it just depends on the pit stops. It depends on the pit stops because I don't think Josh can check out necessarily, but it's going to be the same way that Daytona usually plays out, which means it's probably going to be a group of 4 or 5 people, and that first pit could separate everyone, and then it's going to be a catch-up game, to the second pit stop, and then after the second pit stop, it's game on. So
I'm going to tell you what Josh is better at than anybody in the field. Do you want to know? And this is no knock on Danny or any of those guys.
Shaving?
This is no knock on Danny Eslick or any of the other competitors. It's a personal opinion. Josh Hayes is amazing on an outlap.
Oh, he is. No, there's no doubt.
He's amazing on an outlap. And that race on your in-lap and your outlap, you can literally win the race. We've seen Danny do it. We've seen other guys do it in the past. Scott Russell was amazing. Matt Mladen was amazing.
Josh Hayes can thank that on Matt Mladen, and he has before, because he looked at Matt when Matt was at his peak, and he said, how does that guy? And Matt was really good on an outlap and really good on a second lap. In practice, he didn't spend any time getting up to speed. He was up to speed second lap.
Correct.
So, and Hayes adopted that attitude. So for sure, I see what you're saying too. That helps in the 200 big time.
It's going to be interesting.
Yes, it will. All right. So that's Josh Hayes, Daytona 200, blah, 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 blah. We'll talk about that later on, but it's time to recap some Supercross, Jason, because I know that you got to see it when you were in Australia, all laid up with your leg in the air.
Yep.
I'm calling it Mud Bowl in San Diego last weekend because it was an absolutely just gnarly race, right?
Yep.
I mean, what did you see there?
Same as you. It's just the ultimate equalizer again, but the guys that are, you just kind of got those top 5, 6 guys that are just always going to be there all weekend long, and they were there. Cooper Webb with a little bit of a slip up, which is really easy to do in those conditions. Greg, the thing I can't believe out of the whole deal. Have you been reading about the stuff about these guys with the burns on their body from the lime they put in the
lime?
Dirt? Unreal. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that can happen this day and age, and I've seen a couple of the guys posting photos of themselves where they have serious burns on their legs and their neck and their bodies, and bikes were just destroyed. I know Tyler Bowers was really kind of pissed off about it, just reading some of the things he wrote. Just bike can basically just go in the garbage now. That's a real problem, isn't it? I think, Villapoto said something. He's like, well, now the rain stopped, the track actually gets worse. They would have rather had it just kept pouring rain,
Yes,
because they're trying to fix the problem then by putting the lime down, trying to get some sort of normality out of maybe drying the mud or whatever they were trying to do, get it clumping together differently. But boy, it's that was really what sprung to my mind. But the conditions, it almost made you feel like you could get any good, amazing, top enduro rider or enduro cross rider or anything, and they probably could have been competitive that night because you couldn't really jump anything. It was just a big mud fest. It was who was going to stay the cleanest out front, and in the sense of not literal clean, but I'm saying not make the least amount of mistakes and just keep going around.
Because even the race winner Eli Tomac made some mistakes late in the race. I mean, he stopped on a tough block. He basically had to stop when a rider fell right in front of him. I mean, and he obviously was the cleanest of the fast. And
correct.
It was basically survival. And Eli Tomac was your winner. Marvin Muscan was in second. Ken Roxon was in third. Justin Bogle and our boy Chad Reed gets his best finish of the year, Jason, in fifth.
Loved it.
Yeah,
it was pulling for him. I was pulling for Bogle too. Honestly,
yeah.
I really felt like he had second locked up, and then maybe a little pressure, maybe a little something, because that would have been the great story of the night for me, as if Bogle could have somehow ended up finishing second. It would have hurt me in our fantasy, but the way it turned out, it worked out great for me in the fantasy. But right? But where you at? Well, we'll talk about that later. But
yeah, we'll talk about that later
but it's good to see Bogle up there. Kind of the first round of the year we had Dean Wilson and Malcolm up there. Nobody kind of expected those guys, and in the mud they were shining, and Bogle was doing the same thing here.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Plessinger finished in 7th, and of course his dad is legendary off-road rider, and Aaron grew up riding off-road, and he's tall, and that they thought it gave him a little bit of an advantage, and so 6th place for Aaron I thought was okay. I was expecting him possibly to finish on the podium with those conditions, but still, I mean, anything could happen. You lose focus for a second, but the good news is that Chad Reed is a friend of the podcast, and so we were looking in on it from the outside, so I wanted to get Chad's impressions on what happened because, like I said, it was an absolutely gnarly night.
It was definitely gnarly. Where do you start? I mean, like obviously when you have that rain delay schedule and you just, you're there since 10 o'clock in the morning and you don't get to look at the track until 3:45, and basically it was kind of windy and, not ideal conditions all day long. And then suddenly, right when they pull the plastic off the track and we go walk the track, it just starts dumping. And just, like the worst weather of the day was literally when we walked the track and we did practice. And then after that, it pretty much there was no rain. But man, it came down in that short amount of period, time. And practice was really challenging, and track was way different than I expected, like it kind of like you, almost like with the weather that we had the couple of days before and then the downpour, the expectation was it was just kind of be a nasty mess. But they had rolled the track, and so it had a really typical California hard base with just water on it. So it was slippery in places, it was soft in places, so just really challenging. And yeah, pretty much just had to compensate, try to find, the best way to get the job done. And, and I struggled in my heat. I think I qualified 7th, gave me about a 13th place gate pick. And, yeah, got a decent start in the main event. And honestly, like I rode okay, but not like I didn't have my normal comfort that I have in those conditions. Maybe the last 4 laps, I kind of felt more my normal self in those conditions, but I really struggled at the beginning of the race. I didn't have a flow. I felt like I was around a couple of guys that I learned bad habits from, and, kind of got into a situation where I just had to, like almost slow down to go faster. And then once I got my groove going on, then I, passed about 3-4 people and got up into 5th. So that was nice.
Yeah. So he was actually pretty pumped about the result, obviously, because it's been his best result in, recent times. But I think you can kind of hear in his voice, Jay, can't you, that the frustration of that weekend? Because it was Tuesday when we talked, but still, he's still thinking about like, oh man, that was a toughie.
Well, I feel like Chad looks at everything as an opportunity, as you do as a racer. When I hear him talking about learning bad habits from some other guys, I think that Chad should be the guy that, he's got the experience and he's got the know-how. So he probably gets frustrated at himself that he gets either stuck behind people or follows or does whatever he might be talking about in that situation. He probably has to slap himself and say, hey, I should be doing better than this. I'm the veteran guy here. I've got the experience. He really seems to always shine when the conditions get really, really bad and gnarly. I remember at Daytona when his bike died that year. I mean, the lead he had and those conditions at Daytona that year made San Diego look like nothing. And, the guy's tough as nails. So he might look at that 5th as a opportunity wasted, maybe gave up a little bit too much in the first 5-6, laps that he couldn't make up enough. But, I'm sure if you'd have said to him at the beginning of the night, you're going to get a top 5 result, he probably would have taken that, just based off of some of the other results this year. I think he would have taken that. But you can definitely sense his frustration, and I like that because it just shows that how bad he still wants to do well.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of the Supercross season, so I was really curious to find out like if you can prepare for a race like that, because I'm thinking to myself, well, it's raining during Supercross season, so why not just take the day off?
Oh, absolutely. I can honestly say in all my my 18 years here and my 22 years as a professional. Anytime, motocross is different. Obviously, motocross, you go out and splash in the mud and, you try to get your motos in because that's realistic. But yeah, Supercross, if it's raining, that's my excuse for a day off and, hit the gym or something in closed doors. But obviously, yeah, when you're being around, as long as I have, you've been exposed to, various different conditions and, those conditions, it was a lot like Seattle last year, to be honest with you, like the way the track rode and how it was really quite a slow pace, no jumps really getting done. That's how Seattle was last year. So it was a lot like that. I don't mind it, like for me, I like it. Like I said, I just didn't feel like I didn't have my normal feeling of like how like I feel like I stand up and have a good rhythm and, being able to be real smooth and things like that. And like, I really thought that early in the race. And then like the last 4 or 5 laps, that feeling started to come back again.
It's interesting. They were saying even in the broadcast, listen to Ricky about how some of the guys, sitting down a lot. Some of the guys were standing up a lot. I know Plessinger uses his legs a lot to stand up because he's tall, big advantage. But I think that it's such a key that you know where the front wheel is at all times in those conditions on a motocross bike. It just looks so easy, doesn't it, Greg? That how easy the guys were tipping over.
Yeah.
It looks so simple and like they weren't even doing anything, the poor guys. And just hearing what he's saying there is it's, I would love to talk to like one of the crews and just really know how much is salvageable on a bike like that after a night like that. Like it's just got to get into all the seals and it's got to just get so nasty and so gnarly. And yeah, going out and practicing and that stuff, I think that's, Chad raced over in the World Championships a lot too prior to coming to America, I believe. And I think that probably had a lot of rain riding, and I think it's just an experience thing in motocross. It's not like something that you really go out and practice. If it's pouring, you do what he said, you train indoors and do whatever. But again, it goes to the fact that, kind of where were you raised? If you're raised on the East Coast, especially up where you're from, Northeast and things like that, in the rain, sometimes you don't have a choice. You got to get out and ride. So some guys might be a little bit better at it than others.
Yeah, and he was saying that it was getting so deep, that the foundation of those tracks is plywood, and then they pile dirt on top of it. And he said it was so deep that they were actually into the plywood, and it was really difficult to get traction when you're just spinning on wet plywood too.
Can't imagine.
So there were just so many factors there, But now that we're a couple races into the season, Jay, one of the things that Chad and I continuously talk about is the fact that we're getting into the meat of the season, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like, hey, this is like Chad Reed time, isn't it? And I said, isn't it like your bread and butter time of the season?
I hope so. I mean, I feel that I've always been strong, when we start shifting gears to the East Coast. I feel like you have to be realistic and unfortunately, like, though I don't think my performance was amazing, like that's my best finish in a year and a half. So I feel that, I have to be really happy with that and embrace that it was my best one in a while and learn from it. And I had a solid day today at the track. And for me, it's just about like, put yourself in a top 5, and then believe that you belong there. And then once you do that, and then, and then it's about, okay, now step onto the podium and believe you're there. And it just, what do we got? 12 rounds to go, I believe. And, I'm not throwing out like, oh, I want to win this championship. I think that's a realistic, like that's my goal is obviously always win a race, win a championship. But I think right now the biggest goal is, consistently get on the top 5, then get on the podium, then consistently be on the podium, and then think about winning. And just trying to take one step at a time and embracing it, and it's like when and if the opportunity arises that you put yourself in a position to win, then you take it, but yeah, that's it for me. Like that's my personal challenge, like I'm not supposed to do that, they tell me, like I'm too old for that. So
it's exactly right. I think that I think the more confidence he gets. I mean, look, Greg, what is he? 8th in the points right now. He's well within reach of top 5. Cooper Webb is 5th in the points at 72, who's won a couple races this year. So, when you look at it, Chad's only 17 points behind him. Right now at the top, it's so close. He's 30 points out of the lead, so he's got a race plus a little bit, 26 points to win to try to get himself back in. But it's not like out of the realms of possibilities that Chad couldn't put a good little run together, especially if he gets his groove going as they start heading back east. It's still a long season. What are we, 5 rounds in? So there's still time there. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And, it's great, obviously, again, having him on here and giving us his insight. I think that what we really need is somebody to get on here and give you a little insight into our RM Fantasy Supercross picks, because are
we doing the segment really?
I'm kind of looking. I'm looking right now, and I'm just seeing how far down I got to go.
Okay.
Wait, just stop. Just hold on a second. All right, you're 26th. Okay,
Ooh,
like this is something that you wanted to do. This is something that you kind of drew all of us into, and we've got. What do we got? We got 48. You're doing good. By all stretch of the imagination, if you base this off of your normal racing career, there's 44 people and you're 26, which is like, those are career stats for you. So you're not doing bad. You got Dan right in front of you. You guys are tied on points. You and producer Dan are tied on points. Did you see that?
Are you okay? Because I lost you there for a while. I didn't really understand what you were saying. It sounded like you were speaking Australian. I mean, maybe you were there too long.
I'm saying
because I get it. Okay, so you're what? You're 5th. You're 10 points out of the lead. Good for you. I've stumbled.
My boy Kevin. How about my boy Kevin's leading? And he's gone full scientific mode on this shit. You should see what he's done.
Are you serious?
Oh my God, Kevin. He's just.
Well, at least he knocked Corey Alexander out of the top, and that to me is like pure gold.
He was talking crap last week. My buddy Alex Fuller is in 2nd, so and he got completely lucky. He missed a week on it. He missed a week, and it just happened that the week later, his picks killed it. So Alex is just lucking his way into it. Kevin's gone full-blown scientific overthinking, so I feel like I have a chance against him. Corey just is Corey. So, but I'm actually impressed with your 26th. I really, really am. You're doing good.
Settle down. I will say this, though, about our Craig's Garage pod group on the RM Fantasy XX. We are ranked 5,789 of 7,585. We suck. Just as a group, we suck.
We are horrible. There's no question.
Hey, by the way, who's Travis Becker? Do you know a Travis Becker?
I don't.
Okay, because he put on there, I'm coming for you, G-Dub. Ha. He'll fast JP. See you guys on the pod next week. So he's
Travis.
His username is Beat G-Dub.
Gotta love the guy. Where's he at? Where's Travis?
Beat G-Dub is 38th right now. So Travis maybe he missed a couple. Yeah.
Oh, Travis, we got to do some work because you cannot let Greg beat you. What's he behind you? 63 and
he's 52. Of course, remember? Jeff from ARAI is 40th, so I'm kind of happy with that. I'm good for the couple people I'm beating.
Wasn't Taylor Knapp leading after the first week?
He was right up there. He's
28th now. Taylor's gone back.
I'm telling you. Our boy Mark Bothy, he's in 12th, so we got.
Where's Mark?
Yeah, Mark's in 12th spot, so he's floundering around, But I think the hardest thing to look at, though, not that I'm 26th, is that I'm 45,309th overall. That stings a little. Okay.
Well,
just a little bit.
The good thing is we're having fun doing it. We're having a blast. It's good to have a little.
It is, and you can always join us. RMFantasySX.com, Greg's Garage Pod group. You can join the group and have fun, and maybe we'll talk about you. But it certainly puts Supercross in a different light. Yep. Oh, you know what that means, Jason? That means it is time for our quick shift segment presented by ARAI. We'll rattle off some questions and then answer them. So, Jason, as you know, for 3 generations, ARAI has been making some of the world's best helmets. And of course, ARAI helmets meet all safety standards, but they also pride themselves on having a blend of engineering tech and human craftsmanship. That makes an ARAI helmet fit better and feel better, which also protects your head better. Your head is worth the best. So visit ARAIAmericas.com for more information on tech fit and paint jobs. ARAIAmericas.com. You owe it to you. All right, Jason, I'm going to start this quick shift segment. It's going to be a bit of a long one, okay? But this is something that I think is very interesting on the MotoGP side of things. So on a website called Marca.com, they interviewed world champ Marc Marquez in MotoGP. And one of the questions went like this. This was the question. In his last statement, Valentino Rossi seemed to be starting to bury the hatchet. Would you hold out your hand again? Now, this is referring to a time during the season when they were at a press conference, I believe, right? And Marquez extended his hand and Rossi turned him down, like in front of everyone. So the question is, would you extend the hand again? Marquez said, I've already given it to him. Then the question came back, but would you do it again? Marquez answered, no, I've already gave it to him, right? Well, that's it. You do it once and that's it. At no time do I have a grudge or anything like that. And then Marquez went on to say some flattering things about Valentino and his riding. JP, I'm curious about your thoughts on Marquez taking a firm stand on Valentino Rossi.
You know, I think that it goes without saying that over the years, it's kind of been thought that Valley likes to play head games with people. And but I definitely feel, too, that he really, really felt slighted by the championship. What was it, Greg? 15 or 16 now? I'm sorry, I can't remember. But the year that it all went bad and with it Sepang and, he ran Marquez ride. But, he still holds pretty big grudge for that. And I think, there's weekends, Greg. I think Marc Marquez is the best rider without question. I actually got asked a question the other week about Marquez and Rossi in their primes, who wins? And it's a difficult question. I don't think you can ever really get into any of those answers because it's just hard, different times and things. But Marquez is such an incredible rider. Like, I don't know if we've ever really seen anything like him, how he can control situations. But I do see him do stupid stuff. Like Argentina last year to me was absurd. Watching the kid stall his bike on the grid, hold up the grid, ride his bike backwards, and then literally runs into Spargaro. Just he's tagging people. Even the Rossi thing, okay, Rossi could have stood his bike upright and not fallen over in the grass. I get all that. But he does just stuff where he takes his brain out and unplugs. And I don't really feel like every champion that we have seen over the years really does that. Like I've never seen Rossi just bounce off numerous people in a race. I've never seen that. Maybe he has, maybe it's just not been brought to the forefront like it did with Marquez. But I think that if Marquez held his hand out, if I hold my hand out and a guy snubs me in front of a group, for me, that's it. Now, if that guy comes back and holds his hand out to me and I feel like I want to shake it, then maybe I will, maybe I won't. Just depends on the day, I think. At the end of the day, they're competitors. They don't have to like each other. I mean, MotoGP and all the fans love this stuff because it creates a little controversy, good guy, bad guy thing. So, I don't have a problem with it. I don't think that it really matters too much, but I think that I definitely don't think I'd be the guy to hold my hand out again. Sure, on a cool off lap, after a big battle, whatever, sure, you shake a guy's hand, just out of respect of the ride that you just put in against each other, possibly. But I don't think he owes Valley anything at this point. He has his opinion on what he felt, like how things went down or how they do go down. And last year there was no real apology that was coming from him after Argentina. You saw him run down to the garage, but you knew that wasn't going to be anything other than, I don't know how sincere that could have been, but it's more or less the cameras are on me. I better run down there. That's kind of how it felt to me. Could be completely off on that, but that's how it felt. But yeah, I don't think he needs to hold his hand out again. I think if Rossi does and he chooses he wants to shake his hand, then they can do it. Now,
this is a little different for us during this segment, but the one thing that's interesting is I asked the same question to Chad Reed, and to give you some background, Chad Reed loves MotoGP, like loves it, and he is very good friends with both riders, and he's known Marc Marquez for many years. So it's a very interesting answer. It's a little bit long, but I wanted you to hear it, Jason, because it's a different perspective. So in asking that question about Marquez and Rossi in general, this is what Chad Reed had to say.
I'm in a difficult place, I guess, because they're both my friends. But I think that you answered honestly, and it's like I'm not afraid of them hearing this, because I'm the biggest Valentino fan ever, and a really good friend of Mark, and I really thought it was lame what Valentino did. I think that in that scenario, when Mark puts you on the, whether you want to shake his hand or not, and, without going into detail on the whole thing, I really think that you have to take the high road. You have to shake his hand. I just think that you look like such a tool if you don't. And I lost a little bit of respect for Valentino for not shaking his hand. In the case that what Mark's saying, I think it's fair for Mark. I'll go from speaking from just my personal opinion here, not going into Mark versus Valley, but just my personal opinion of somebody who got to witness them at their happiest times of going and hanging out at VR46 and the ranch and Mark was just this little kid that just idolized Valentino, and you could see it, and I really honestly believe that he was so happy to hang out and have lunch with Valentino, go and ride motorcycle, dirt track with him. He generally, that was the feeling and the vibe that Valentino was the god, and and Mark was there to hang out, and he was just pumped. And I was bummed that I seen it go the way it did, and I really don't believe it's an individual, because I've also been through this with Ricky, and I've been through it with James, and I can honestly say that I don't hate Ricky Carmichael, I don't hate James Stewart, but yet the people around me and the people around James and the people around Ricky was really what fueled the rivalry or the bitterness that you had, And at 36 years old, I probably have a very different opinion than when I was 25 in my prime, racing and hating my competitors. I just think that life's too short to hate, and I think that Valentino has a lot of people around him, for good or bad. And I just think that at some Valentino needs to take the high road, and I think that he's getting a taste of his own medicine in some ways. I think that what Mark brings to the table is everything that Valentino did at one point. So it never feels good when you're getting done what you've always done to others. That's my take on it. I think that I don't frown upon what Mark said.
Well, here's the thing, Greg. The way I look at it, I could totally see where Chad's coming from had it been a one-time thing. But you got to remember, there's history now. This isn't just a one-time dig. This is 3, 4, 5 things. And I think that you just get to a point where you get fed up with somebody. I think that,
right.
It's not a deal where you ran me off the track, this and that. When you start seeing that people have certain reputations for certain things, and they're not changing, I think that as a rider, look, there's guys that I hated riding around. I didn't even like being around them, and I just made a point not to really talk to them. They weren't really guys that I just needed to go be pals with or friends with. Would I shake their hand? Yeah, but if they did something really bad to me that I feel they'd already set a standard, and this is what's so crazy about the Marquez thing to me, is that as much as I admire him and think what I think of him, he's this guy who's won these championships that is, in my opinion, better than everybody, that he doesn't need to have all the other little stuff that goes along. And yeah, there was a time when he idolized Valentino Rossi. Fair play. But that's going to change, because as Rossi starts getting beat by this kid, that's going to change his perspective of Mark as well. I mean, he's pretty much been able to fend off everybody that's ever idolized him in the past. When you're 40 years old, still racing MotoGP, there's going to be a lot of guys that have already come along and have told you that they idolize you, and you've been able to handle them. And there's just been one guy that hasn't. And I'm sure that that's frustrating. And at the age that he's at now, yeah, I think there was a time when he was on this roll to maybe win 13, 14, 15 world championships. And then this kid's come along and change some of that. So I agree with Chad on one side, that it was pretty childish that when you're on a big stage like that, just shake his hand. But if you really don't want to and you're fed up with somebody, I could see that too. I could see it where you just go, you know what? I don't need to shake your hand. We don't need to pretend. I don't need to pretend to be your buddy, you know?
Yeah.
And I really, I don't care either way. I
Hey, it
think
was good
both
for the
them are
drama of the
incredible.
sport, wasn't it, Jay? I mean,
Oh,
really, at the end of the
100%.
day, it was, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. No, exactly. Well, moving forward, Greg, MotoAmerica had a story last week about last week's Thunder Hill test, and it was Cameron Beaubier who was fastest, despite having said on the podcast last week that he didn't have much to test. When you look at the times, Cam at a 45.2, Tony at a
Mhm.
45.5, Gerloff 0.2 behind him, and then Josh Herron and JD Beach 46.5. Are you surprised at JD or Cam? You're surprised by the times? I mean, it seems to me, Greg, that Cameron has kind of gotten to be known a little bit as a Thunderhill specialist. It seems like they've been testing there 3 or 4 times over the last couple of years. They go up to Thunderhill a lot now, and Cameron's kind of the guy up there, it seems like. But when you look at like some of the other times and some of the other tests, what are you gathering from the testing so far in the MotoAmerica season?
Well, I was happy to see Gerloff only 0.2 off of Tony. You know, I think it's time for Gerloff, you know, to in his second year on the Superbike to step up. So, but like you're saying, they have tested there quite a bit. JD Beach being 1.3 off. I don't know if it's cause for alarm just yet. You know what I mean? But I kind of expect JD. I don't know if I have a fantasy about JD being right in the mix and being, you know, like as fast or a 10th off kind of a thing. So when I initially saw the list, they're all unofficial times as well, and we don't know exactly what Richard Stamboli had JD testing either. You know, which is obviously part of it that you've talked about. So I would say probably Gerloff is a happy surprise for me that he's that close, and I'm not really surprised about Herron. He's going to need a little bit of time to still adjust to that Suzuki, but I would say the biggest thing for me is probably just JD at the moment. You know, so. We'll have opportunities.
But I think that he'll, you know, Greg, I watched some videos of those guys coming into turn 14 at Thunder Hill last week. And I don't know if you paid attention and if you saw those too.
I did, yeah.
But if you listen to them coming into there, in turn 14, you go down a pretty fast straightaway. You brake for 14, probably second gear corner on Superbike, short shift to third before they come on the front straightaway, I would assume. Probably one of the guys could tell us better. But I could still hear JD's bike backing in a tremendous amount. And I think that is one of the things that he really worked on the 600 that he got better at, of trying to prevent the bike from backing in as much. And that might be something that he's getting used to on the Superbike, because with more speed, now he's going down the straightaways that much quicker, better brakes, pulling on the lever that much harder, and creating this bike backing itself into the corner a little bit, I think is that's stuff that could still be slowing him down mid corner. It'd be interesting to see. JD's going to be there before the end of the year. You can mark my words on that. I don't think that's a fantasy that you're thinking of at all. I think you're 100% onto that. But he's going to adapt, and he's going to learn from Richard a lot of different things. So, no, I agree with you, Greg. I think he'll be fine. And but that was just I did take that away from watching a couple of the guys go into turn 14, different riders.
That's what you do. That is what you do. It's going to be an exciting MotoAmerica season, I think.
It's going to be
once
great.
we get those entry lists, we're going to be able to talk about it in more detail. Well, we're going to wrap this one up, Jason. I'm so happy to have you back in the States, and I think a very good podcast, and thanks for struggling through this. I know you're sitting at your desk right now with your leg probably in the air and on not enough painkillers, I would have to imagine. So hopefully you'll be able to get some rest, and we'll be fresh to do this again next week.
Absolutely, Greg. Thanks again for everything, and thanks to all our listeners. And yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll wrap up the Sepang test. Keep our eyes on that for the next couple of days, and hopefully we'll see some exciting things there, and we'll be able to build on our podcast for next week.
Cool. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you then.
See ya.